is 1:41. We're convening the May 23rd meeting of the Vermont Community Broadband Board. Board members in attendance so far are Dan, Brian, and myself. Staff in attendance are Christine, Stan, and Alyssa. We expect Laura, and Rob is absent, and so far Holly is absent. And with that, I'm going to move that we approve the agenda sent to our board packet. Do I have a second of the agenda?
Second.
All right, we got a second. Is there any discussion or any changes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, agenda is as it stands. So we are reconvening the meeting of May 16th. First on our agenda for action is approval of the May 16th, 2022 draft minutes, part 1. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry. Minutes are approved. First item up on the agenda is public comment. Christine, can you or Alyssa or Stan run the public comment for me? I'm on my iPhone.
Yep, I'd be happy to. I can say so. At this point, this is a continuation of our previous meeting of the 16th. So we're going to start with public comment. If you want to make a comment, please raise your hand and we will recognize you. I don't see any hands coming up. We'll give it another minute or so.
Okay. And Christine, just to give you a heads up, I'm on my iPhone because for whatever reason my internet connection is sketchy today and it wouldn't come through via video. So I'm not seeing like hands up and things of that nature.
Yep, I'll watch for it.
It's a very small screen, so just to give everybody a heads up on that.
Okay, I would say at this point we do not have any public. Oh wait, hand just went up.
Okay.
I recognize Irv Tomei. Irv, go ahead. And here you go.
Thank you. I listened to Mr. Clark's presentation from the telco, and I wouldn't want to say that there was distortion of the facts, but there was a selective reading of some of the facts, or perhaps a misunderstanding of some of the facts in his characterization of the existing CUD that of which I am the former chair, EC Fiber. He referred to our ARPU, our average revenue per user, at $105 a month, and suggested that that indicated that we were far more expensive than his offering will be. I want to point out that EC Fiber grew in a time, in a situation where the only financing options available were initially by private investment and then by revenue bonds. And we presently have about $63 million in revenue bond debt. That is the major reason that our monthly fees are high. On the other hand, despite that, he talks about needing about a dozen subscribers per mile, and he is asking for 50% input from the VCBB to make that a going proposition for him. Even with the debt we carry, we need an average of 6 customers per mile on mature network. Something doesn't quite add up here. And what it is that doesn't add up is this is a classic case of cherry.
I think Irv
Just froze.
Did we lose him?
Cherry picking froze the screen.
Yep. We need.
Okay.
he needs fiber optic broadband.
I hear him loud and clear.
Okay, we'll get back to him if he unfreezes, but meanwhile, anybody else have a comment? Great, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we can move on.
Okay. All right, so first item on our agenda after public comment is staff updates. Christine, I'll let you tee this up.
Yeah, stay tuned. We just had a very good press conference with the governor, and Congressman Welch was there, as well as other representatives up in Bolton. It was an exciting moment because we announced the Bolton grant as well as the NEK grant, and of course NEK serving the 50 most difficult towns in the state. I think for all of us, we should be happy that they're the first out of the tunnel in terms of getting things done.
Great.
So I think everybody was happy. There was a story that was done on Channel 5. You can check that out. That was a precursor to this, which was well done. So we're getting good press. I will say, you know, I definitely want to raise this to the board. I think you've seen it, but I was a little surprised when the governor assigned Doug Farnham from his administration to be the lead for the BEAD program. That happened without any consultation, and we found out about this through rumor, and I, of course, had to call Doug and say, hey, is this true? So, you know, what does that mean? Well, if Doug continues to operate in the way he's operated, then, you know, he's been a fine conduit for ARPA. He's certainly one of the most talented people I've worked with in terms of financing. So, and he assures us that that's the way it's going to continue. He just sees his role as being the finance funnel. But at the same time, the NTIA did recommend that the broadband board, the broadband leaders be the ones nominated. So I'm not sure what happened. Maybe it was just somebody making a recommendation without a lot of background. But anyway, I did want to raise this to the board. I'm not, you know, I guess, you know, I would, if you have any questions, I would anticipate some questions from me on this. One of the things I would suggest, depending on where this goes, is maybe we have Doug attend the board meeting next week and explain how he sees his role. But I'd love your thoughts on that as board members.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And regardless of how the process worked, I think just in general, that's a good idea to have him introduce himself and let's have a chat, say hi.
Okay, we'll put him on the agenda.
Okay.
Other than the shock value, I'm not too worried personally, but we'll see where it goes. So I want to move forward with positive intent here, but.
What's the shock value? I'm missing something here.
Well, the fact that this was all done, you know, without consulting us, which that was a surprise. I think that's just bad form. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
But if that's the worst thing someone does, I've been guilty of that before. So.
In terms of the preference, Christine, how many outfits from the press were available for the meeting today?
All the major outfits were there. Vermont Public Radio, WCAX, the Channel 5 station, whatever that is. And, you know, it was well covered.
Good.
So I think that's all good news. You know, the question continues to come up, and one of the questions that I answered honestly, which I think it caught the governor by surprise, is I was asked how many people would be connected by this fall. And I said, there won't be many people connected by this fall. And I pointed out that we've been working on this for 20 years. And, you know, FDR announced in 35 that we're going to connect everybody to electricity. It took decades. I said, beware of snake oil salespeople that tell you it can done quicker, but we've got a good plan. And our plan is to build 1,800 miles a year starting in the fall. So not sure I answered that the best way politically, but it was honest anyway.
Yeah. So we do have a few small pockets that have been connected.
Yes, yeah,
And certainly we should trumpet those successes, even though we're starting slow, and any big initiative like this will be slow, but we should trumpet those numbers. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but we should definitely keep those in the back of our mind.
yeah. So,
Yeah, it will be great to start seeing that counter start rising. And the press conference was in Bolton, and I thought the trucks were there more for show, but Roger confirmed that they actually are putting up fiber today there. So that was exciting.
That's great.
yeah, and I think it stresses the importance. Alyssa, thanks for kicking in. And we're at our, Alyssa's going to bring me into the next meeting with Stone Environmental, but I think it's good to get that, that reporting system in place now so people can see. So we don't need to, be talking euphemisms here. We can actually talk about the data and who's getting connected and how fast. So that, well, I think that's, Alyssa, is it safe to say that's ready for prime time, or is it, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have anyone reporting anything yet, but yes, it can be functioning as soon as we finalize that reporting mechanism.
Yep, thanks. So that's an action item that falls back to me, which is to start figuring out how we're going to get the CDs to reporting that. So, okay, good. Stan, you want to talk about legal and legislative matters?
Well, the legislature wrapped up last Friday, so things have been quiet for the last week, but we've been working with Otelco and with Maple regarding this Otelco's appeal, and we'll be having a meeting next week with both parties to hopefully work on a solution that could work for both parties. We'll see what they bring to the table, and hopefully make some progress there.
Yeah, and Rob and I both have talked separately to Otelco and Maple to kind of get them prepared for the discussion, which is this Thursday. We're going to spend, we've allocated 3 hours to sit down with the two of them and see if we can come up with an answer. There seems to be flexibility on both parties' part. So hopefully we can come out with some kind of compromise. So, and we'll talk about, Stan has a lot of follow-up work to do. When we get to the presentation about BEAD, there's a lot of questions about BEAD that could be potential problems for us in the future, but we'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay. Any questions of Stan? Are there any other staff updates, Christine?
Nope, Alyssa, got anything?
Nope, I don't. I just completed a project management course last week, so I appreciate that support from staff.
Excellent. Very good.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Staff updates are complete. Let's move on to next item, which is budget update. Christine, you want to take that up?
Yeah, and again, I'll talk about the budget. I think we've got a pretty good picture of the funds available to us. I will share my screen and we can walk this. I'd like to make sure the entire board is familiar with this budget. So I would not asking for a vote this week, but I'll certainly, if I'll fill Laura and Holly in separately on the budget and get their input before asking for approval. The budget we put together, kind of broke it into two parts. Let me pull the screen up here, where it is. I had prepared to pull up there. There it is. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, hang on, let me try. Okay, can you see the agenda for the board
Yes.
meeting? Okay, so I'm going to be working right out of what's in your packet, sorry. Scroll down here to where. Okay, so if you look at the capital budget, it's quite significant, and this kind of lays out the challenge for next year. You know, we're looking at a $219 million capital budget. And, you know, of course, our goal is to get all that obligated next year. And you know, I talked about, I might have been a little skeptical about how many addresses we can get connected by the fall, but I think by the time the legislative session starts, we're gonna have some good. I think the fall, a lot of work's gonna get done, and it's really important for us to do this because you look at this kind of a budget and it's kind of a neon sign for people looking for money. So we definitely, we at staff have talked about the importance of getting some results by next year. And I think we're on track to do that. But any questions on the capital budget? I think that's pretty straightforward.
So Christine, so it looks like the game plan is to roll all the capital dollars we have access to. This is actually a question, not a statement. Is it the game plan to roll all the capital dollars we have access to by the close of fiscal year 2023?
Yes, that's to get all of that obligated.
Okay. So once it's in the hands of all the CUDs and all the applicants that we approve, then within the next year, just a little over a year, all the funds will have been set in motion for the CUDs and others to start rolling up their sleeves and doing the rollout of the fiber deployment.
Yes, and you know, I suggest that that's something the board measure us on. You know, it really is one of those critical measures. Now, of course, we're not just giving out money to have it spent, and the board's going to be reviewing these. But the point is, that's really one of the early. We've got to get, if we're going to try to get this done in 5 years, you know, we have to get every CUD started. And I think you know, I look at the progress of the CUDs. All the CUDs have a plan, and you're going to see a lot of announcements in the next couple weeks. So I see this as very doable.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm just reiterating kind of I want to make that statement clear for anybody, all the CUDs that are participating today, or anybody watching the video later, that we plan in the next year to roll out all the dollars.
Yep, and our challenge for the following year is to get as much IIJA funding as possible. That's what we lack clarity on the following year, but you know, that's our goal is to pull down as much IIJA funding as possible. So with that, when we get into the operations budget, well, any other questions on capital before I move on? Okay, so when we get to the operations budget, we brought personnel. What I'll go from here is go into personnel, which is a significant expense. We've allocated additional positions in order to pull down the IIJA funds. One of the things that the NTI has been clear on is the states have to demonstrate they have the capacity. Now, I think we'll be in good shape. I don't think we need a huge, you know, enterprise to do this. We basically, in the IIJA, as soon as you file a letter of intent, which was filed last week, we can pull down $5 million for planning. Now, our goal should be not to spend as little of that planning money as possible, because that $5 million comes from the total that's been committed to the state, the $100 million. So any money we spend is money that doesn't go to infrastructure. So when I present this budget, it doesn't mean we're going to carry out every you know, we're going to go hire every person that's in here. Again, the board's going to approve of hiring when it comes time. But, you know, we asked the legislature to create these positions. We were successful. We're putting them in the budget. But our goal is to try to do this with as few people as possible. On the other hand, we're all working way too many hours, you know, and I don't want to burn Rob out or burn Stan out or Alyssa. We have a very dedicated staff. So I'm going to just not hit these numbers yet. I want to go through well, first let me talk about the revenue sources, but I'm not going to talk about expenditures yet. You know, we're looking at Act 71 with carryover from last year. We got about $1.7 million. We have a universal service fund, which has 1.117 million in it. NBRC fund 333,000, and then the grant for 5 million. So operations fund total of 8.148 million. Obviously, we're not going to spend all that. So let me talk about personnel. If you look at where we are today, we have a grant. We have a grant administrator. We have an executive director. We have a general counsel, and we have Alyssa, who we're working through an RFR, a reclassification to special projects manager. You've already approved the project, broadband project developer. We have the deputy director. So no ads here. But let me just tell you, when you get down to the bead capacity, one of the issues, and we're talking to the PSD about it now, is the state reporting system is inadequate for what we're trying to do here. So if you look down below, Administrative Services Coordinator 4, one of their major functions is to chase things. There's been a lot of breakdowns in terms of CUDs, you know, waiting literally sometimes months to get their invoices paid. Now, I'm not going to do any finger pointing here because many times it's been the CUD themselves that have screwed up. But at the same time, you know, we need someone who's chasing all this. So what I envision from this administrative coordinator is they develop a report for us, a chart. They maintain the chart spreadsheet that says, when did the invoice come? When did it get paid? And we start reporting on days to payment. The other thing about reporting finances is it takes so long for any of the invoices to get through the system that I would not even want to think about reporting to the board money spent as the state shows it. What I think is most important for us is to talk about obligated funds. So once we've obligated the funds, we don't want to spend it twice. So rather than work from you know the money spent, we should work from money obligated. So I want to throw that out to the board and get your thoughts. What do you think about that statement? Because that implies we're going to set up a system to monitor and report it.
Christine, help me with that question in terms of, you want to talk about money obligated versus money spent.
Yeah, because officially in the state system, it's not spent till the invoices is paid. And some of you who you know, submit your invoices for payment of the board are experiencing some of the long delays that happen with the state systems. There are a lot of handoffs.
But wouldn't you be tracking both? So
Yes, we definitely would track both, because ultimately but I think I'm recommending the more important thing for the board is to know what we've obligated. Now, there's another thing the board should see, of course, is what money is spent, but that's not going to make much sense to you.
agreed. You want to know what you've already promised and pledged. And just, we have to assume that the paperwork system is going to catch up for the actual monies spent. So I get that, but I do think and as you said, we need to track both and just be conscious of both.
Right. Yeah, and that's the job of the administrative service coordinator. So we have someone who's going to be, and you know, when those invoices get over 10 days, they're calling and asking questions and chasing these down. And they're also, you know, that's also ensuring that this CUD, because what happened, it's ensuring that the CUDs are filling it out properly. So we have one example where one of the CUDs had filed different tax numbers. You know, what's the tax number we use? The EINs. You know, 4 different pieces of information on EIN. These type of the EIN changes, it causes problems. Of course, we didn't hear about it at the staff until about 2 months later. So, you know, it may have been the CUD that necessarily created the problem, but we also want to know when the problem occurred so we can chase it down.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yep.
And Carol Flint, you know, she's helping us with this at the PSD. She was saying, well, you know, give me some time to work this. And I said, you know what, Carol, we need to get, she agrees with the fact that we need somebody who monitors all this with the size of the budget. You know, she mentioned their budgets, you know, been 5 million here, 2 million there, and we're spending lots of millions. So their system wasn't necessarily designed for this volume of spending. We've got this rural broadband technical specialist. That's really again someone to work all of the issues that are with the towns and the CUDs. You know, we get dozens of calls daily that we need to have managed, and I imagine they're going to accelerate rapidly as we get into construction. That's taking a great deal of our time responding. Both Rob and I, you know, and the whole staff chases down these CUD and town requests daily. The Director of Regulatory Compliance and Risk Management, that person, if you scroll down here, is 8 of the 9 CUDs are labeled as high risk from a grant perspective due to their infancy. Position will work with the CUD's general counsel and outside consultants to ensure that their systems and reporting are in place to comply with the BEAD requirements. Position will be responsible for ARPA and IIJ documentation, reporting, and compliance enforcement. When we get into the IIJA update later on, you're going to see the IIJA has a whole host of different requirements than ARPA. Most of the CUDs we feel confident have the people in place in order to handle it, but we need to be following up closely with each of those CUDs. We still have a couple CUDs that we're not sure from a human resource capacity they have what they need, but we're working with them on that. And then the last one is the Digital Equity Officer, and you know that's now that we have we'll have to talk with Doug to figure out where they're going with equity on this, but you know, our recommendation is that we do grant management and provide funding to the EAB, which is positioned to do that. One of my fears is the governor might pick one of his agencies to do this. If that's the case, we wouldn't need this person, but I think we should discuss that thoroughly before that happens. So those are the positions we're recommending to set aside. The thing we're working on right now, the immediate need is for the Administrative Services Coordinator 4. So we'll be coming in with you shortly on that. That's what we're working with Carol on.
Okay.
Any questions on personnel?
I have a comment, Patty.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Christine, as you get staffed up, and we talked about this ages ago, but you didn't have a lot of help. So as you get closer and closer to this, some of the things like you just mentioned, basic finance monitoring, like you would for your checkbook. You've made commitments. Where are you on the spend? When is it the anticipated cash flow going to leave the account, all the fundamentals that I would expect to see there. But from a project management perspective, I hope we can get schedules from the CUDs, and then we would be measuring performance against those schedules, and maybe a rolled up dashboard in aggregate of we expected to have X number of miles put in, and this is where we are in performance overall statewide or by CUD. I don't want to get too prescriptive here, but in every project we have milestones that we're looking for, some key indicators that we're watching to make sure that we're not running amok. And once you get the staff in place, I hope that we can get something like that in place, because you'll have the GIS tools, you have the administrative services.
Yeah, I agree. That's really important. And Alyssa came back from a project management boot camp, and we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks. So I will update the board on the progress of that. I agree 100%, Dan.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Other questions on personnel? Equipment and software supplies. This isn't even worthy of discussion. It's, just not much there. So I will skip that slide if anybody's. Contracted services. This is a big expense. So the legal support, that continues. You basically have approved of that in the past. GIS support, that's a continuation of what we're doing as well. Support to develop contracts and funding, that's funded through the NBRC grant. And the fiber optic engine.
Christine, is that line item for the support for the CUDs, the legal help, is that already
Yes.
funded grant with money in
Yep.
hand?
Yes, yeah, it's already funded. So the only new one here is this fiber optic engineer. We would like to hire this person in-house, but we may not be able to find anybody. You look at the cost of $250 an hour. We're paying $390,000 for that fiber optic engineer, which is really expensive. We could get one in-house significantly cheaper, 100% of the time. But I'm skeptical that we're going to be able to get one, just because they're hard to come by right now. And this is a short-term position, not necessarily long-term. So I can, but anyway, if we could find a good fiber optic engineer that would work full-time, that would be great.
Yeah, $250 an hour strikes me as like a consulting firm price, where you're getting not just the fiber engineer, but also the backroom support too.
Yes, that's an excellent point. So, I would highlight this one for the board, that pay attention to this one, because it's an expensive line item, but let's make sure we're getting what we're paying for. And we may, as you stated, Patty, that we may be getting what we're paying for, but we're paying close attention.
Just curious how you calculated the contingency on these. Is it a percentage of the total?
Yeah, you can see the contingency is really low from a percentage standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 5%. That was my original intent, but the number got pretty large when normally you plan 15% contingency, but that's in project management. I don't know whether you do that in personnel, but I just don't see us needing that much contingency here. Any other questions on this? Training and education. Now, this is a huge expense area, and it'd be great if we could get it done, but this is one of my areas of my greatest fear. Let's talk about the two big items here. Support of statewide workforce development programs. We're in our third session of fiber optic, fiber optic training, which would get us to 36 trained fiber optic technicians. Ideally, we would be doing a earn to learn, pay it forward program and have people and have students placed right into jobs with our construction firms. But we just haven't had a lot of discussion with the firms on this. I reconstituted the workforce development team. It includes a lot of CUD reps now. It started with just NEK. I'm skeptical that we're going to spend that kind of money, but we don't even really know how big our workforce problem is at this point. So again, that's something the board, we should all pay very close attention to, is how we're doing with our workforce. We put in a stipend program to attract fiber optic technicians. The CUDs think it's a great idea, but again, I'm not sure how it's going to work. And then the CUD Accelerator program was a very successful program that was done 2 years ago by, it was Evan Carlson from NEK who led the program, but it was under the firm he was working for. That is training for board members. And then put in a small contingency. I put in the small contingency years because I suspect we're not going to, get the same take rate. Fiber Community Summit, Fiber Connect, we're probably not going to spend as much money there. I don't think we're going to spend as much money, we don't need a big contingency in this one because I don't think we're going to spend all the money. But the good news is whatever we don't spend goes into infrastructure. The bad news to pay attention to is if we're not spending the money because we don't have the humans to do the job, then we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
So, and then of course, board costs are nothing. So we planned, I planned 2 meetings a month for 12 months. Mileage, nobody's done additional board work. So I kept that small. Certainly if we blew the budget by 50%, it wouldn't mean anything in terms of the long term.
Okay, any questions on the budget? I assume, Christine, that's the packet right there.
That's what I want us all to be thinking about. And, we should look for formal approval by July 1st, that's for sure. And we only have 2 more meetings, so. But I will speak to Holly and Laura separately, set up a meeting and present this budget to them and get their thoughts.
Yeah, I do think it's wise that we wait to do an approval until we have all the board members in attendance. If we can reach that. If we can't have everybody in attendance, then we'll cast a vote before the July date.
And we'll certainly know if any board members not present what their will is.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments, discussion on the budget? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to item 6, which is the BEAD program, an IGJ.
Okay. Actually, I'll pull it here. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. This is a short slide, but it kind of gives you an idea of what we're paying attention to. So here's there's 2 parts of the BEAD program. There's the infrastructure program and the equity program. So if you look at the infrastructure program, the states will receive $100 million minimum, plus they will receive additional funding for every under and unserved address that the FCC map shows. Important note here is that the FCC has set a period from June 30th to September 1st of this year for the states to up their broadband maps. We know because this is self-reported data that there are more under and unserved than the maps report. And we know this because some of the towns have done their own data and shown significant numbers are reported to have service and don't have service. So ideally, and we're starting discussions with, we haven't had that discussion with the PSD yet, but ideally we'd like, since the PSD is the reporting agency from the state, you know, ideally we go out and do some ground truthing of the data, which the FCC has put a process in place for, correct our state maps before September 1st. To me, that's the easiest path. Now, I'm saying this without talking to the PSD, so I might be uninformed. But the FCC has also, once that data is in by September 1st, the FCC will release preliminary maps, and then they have a challenge process to go in place where we can challenge those numbers as well. I haven't talked to the PSD about. Seems to me it'd be easier to do it right up front, but I could be totally off base on that. But it's an important number because you're talking about, you know, potentially, I've seen estimates of up to $50 million for the state of Vermont by the additional addresses. So it's time well spent. So that's one of the timelines that we've got to focus on right now because June 30th is coming. But if I'm totally wrong, then no big deal. Anyway, the NOFO, the Notice of Funds Opportunity, if you look at the timeline below, the Notice of Funds Opportunity is live. Doug Farnham has sent in the letter of intent. Once the letter of intent is received, funds can be available for planning. We're to develop a 5-year plan. The good news is, as a state, we pretty much already got a 5-year plan. So it's just, you know, I don't want to oversimplify. I might be oversimplifying it, but you know, we've done a lot of work in the state to develop a 5-year plan. That's what the CUDs are here for. That's what we're here for. So, you know, getting that on paper is what I see happening there. And that gives us an initial proposal. And here's where you see the data due 180 days after the new data maps and notice of fundings are issued. So we're looking at 2024 before we receive funds, which is the middle. Yeah, that, as you can see, that's a little bit of a problem since our funding year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we'll be midway through our 2023 fiscal year before the 2024 funds come. And we're trying to get all of our existing funds obligated in 2022 to keep things moving. The theory here is if we get all the funds obligated in 2022, that will give enough cash flow for the CUDs to have uninterrupted construction through 2024. So that's an important thing for us all to pay attention to. We need to make sure we've got the right cash obligated so that we don't interrupt any construction, and then find out exactly when the IIJA funds become available so we can continue the cash flow to the CUDs to continue their construction uninterrupted. Meanwhile, we will be working with the CUDs and the bonding agencies to get them bonding funding as well during our 2023 year. But you're hearing a couple key project management points that we need to pay attention to. So any questions on the timeline?
That looks good.
Okay, the next slide is the Digital Equity Act. Again, NOFO's been issued. We do a 1-year state planning, which is where we, really, that's where everything's going to tie together. It's my hopes that the EAB is an active role in this. But again, we need to hear from Doug Farnham and what his thoughts are in terms of moving forward. And so there's two parts of this. There's a $2.75 billion pool available. 1.25 billion is a competitive program. So EIB can actually apply for that competitive grant without us. Any agency, any even private, for-profit can apply for a competitive grant. So it doesn't mean that if EIB can still move forward even without our support. Any questions on this one?
Sorry, Christine, can you just, can I take you back one slide? The BEAD program, is that competitive or is that some sort of formulaic allocation?
That's a formulaic.
So what's the amount, and again, I apologize if you said this, what would be a rough estimate, non-binding of what Vermont might expect if we did a good job there?
I think we can target 150 million.
Wow. Okay.
That's certainly my goal.
That would be good.
And Christine, how are you and staff monitoring this? Is there somebody in charge of keeping an eye on all the requirements and?
Yes, that's a good question. That's Stan. Stan's dug into that, and I'll have Stan provide, let me go through. But this is really Stan's slide right here, so you led right into it.
Okay.
Well, Stan, do you want to talk to this slide?
Sure. I have to say it is a group effort. We all look at the the NOFO and went through it. But some of the issues that it's been out for roughly a week and a day now, and we've already spotted a handful of issues. But a lot of these are not. That there's just guidance or just sort of outlines in the NOFO that haven't been, that will require the FCC or the NTIA to provide further guidance on them. For instance, there's a low-cost option that's required for providers to have, but it doesn't specify. It says that each state will have to talk to the Assistant Secretary of the FCC to define what low cost means for your area. So low cost isn't defined yet. We don't know if that's going to be the $30 a month that's in the affordability connectivity program, or whether it will be just $30 off a different one. And there's also a mention in the NOFO about affordability for middle class folks. So it's still work to be done there.
Yeah, and let me add here that one of the reasons we have to pay close attention to this is because the CUDs have done their business plan based on certain take rates, and they assumed a certain revenue, what they call the average revenue per unit. Now, if they have to come up with a lower cost option for low income folks, that represents 40% of their addresses. So it could have we have to pay close attention because it could have a negative impact on their business plan. But we're paying, that's why that's an important bullet. Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, one of the other issues that we spotted was that it will require sub-grantees. The states are the first grantees, but the CUDs and other providers would be sub-grantees, and they will be required to get a letter of credit. The specifics of the letter of credit aren't specified in the NOFO, but it is definitely a requirement. So we're going to have to get more guidance on what this letter of credit will have to cover. Will cover the entire amount of the grants, and what are the parameters of it. That's another expense that CUDs and others will have to incur unless we figure out some other workaround for the letter of credit issue. As Christine mentioned earlier, the broadband office in each state will have to demonstrate that it has the capacity to oversee the grants. So we're definitely working on that to be able to demonstrate that either with additional staff or additional resources. Incidental overbuild is not addressed specifically in the NOFO, but overbuild is, and it does not specify what the limitations or notice requirements are for overbuild. So that's something that will have to be fleshed out as more rules or guidance come to light from the feds. Act 71 has some restrictions on the types of providers that can provide service. For instance, you have to be a provider that is serving fewer than 5 counties in Vermont. Where I believe that the NOFO would allow that. There's language that says that states can't enact laws after the IIJA that restrict who can serve, but Act 71 obviously was prior to the IIJA, and the focus has really been on laws that would exclude public entities from providing services, and this Act 71's restrictions are on private providers. And they're not full out restrictions because a large company that works in more than 5 counties could work with a CUD. It just couldn't work directly. So I think legally there are workarounds and that won't be a problem, but we'll have to do a little bit more analysis to confirm that. There are RDOF limitations on use of funds. We'll just have to make sure that those do not conflict with anything in the NOFO. And the waiver process. I'm not sure, Christine, was that regarding maps, the waiver process?
No, that was the overall waiver. This was regarding the overall waiver process we talked about in terms of wavering from the requirements of, there's a process for wavering any of the requirements. Yep.
Yes, where you have to work with the assistant secretary of the FCC to get a waiver, and it looks from the NOFO like they're being discouraged. They say waivers will be granted only in very rare circumstances, but there is a waiver process. So we will look into that regarding.
Yeah, and that's important because when we talked about this at staff, that the big issue I think here is this letter of credit required. That could be expensive. So we want to understand the waiver process just in case we have to use it.
Exactly.
So those are the issues we know about so far.
And I expect there will be more as we dig deeper into the NOFO.
Back to stop sharing my screen. Okay, that's our presentation. Any additional questions?
No, it looks good. Dan or Brian, do you have anything?
I don't.
I do not, but I have.
Okay. All right. There's no more on that. We can move to the next agenda item, which is the VCUDA update. Do we have a VCUDA update?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is FX here? I don't see FX. Yeah. Okay. So we don't have a VCUDA update. FX is not here.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to public comment. Any new issues? Maybe Herb is still online and see if his connection works now.
Oh, there we go. Let's see who that is that raised their hand. Oh, I don't have the whole list. Hang on, I don't have the whole list.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Go ahead, Herb.
Yes. I apologize. What happened was that my browser crashed, which is a very strange event, and I couldn't get it back connected fast enough. I was in the middle of saying, I think, that there's quite a contrast between the proposition that Otelco brings you and the proposition from the CUD. I hope that you will reject Otelco's application. If you can mediate a compromise between them and Maple, wonderful. But I hope that Maple will not be forced to give up the store, as it were. And this is classic cherry picking, and needs to be looked at very carefully. The fact that, yes, Maple's business plan would still work without those four towns, but it becomes fragile, I think is cause for real concern. And I just wanted to make that opinion known. I was in the middle of saying earlier, I had commented that our ARPU, $105 a month, that does reflect many people taking much higher speed tiers than the basic. And the rate that we charge for the basic rate at the present time is $72 a month. So that's what those were basically the comments I had wanted to make.
Irv, what is their $72 a month? What's the speed that covers?
That's 25.
Okay.
I believe we have plans to increase all of our speed tiers, including the basic, later this year. But I'm not involved in day-to-day details, so I can't tell you more than that.
Thanks. Brian's got his hand up.
Hey, Irv, just real quick. When you say Otelco, that's the very definition of cherry picking. What is it about those four towns? Because my understanding is they're taking those towns in their entirety. They're in those towns already. They're going to be replacing copper with fiber. So what is it that causes you to characterize that as cherry picking specifically?
It is the fact that it's the four towns that make Maple's overall business plan most strongest. It has, as I understand it, the highest percentage of the highest likely take rate. Now, I have not studied Maple's plans in detail. I'm going by what I heard Maple say.
Okay.
It is true that where Otelco's already there and they're upgrading from copper to fiber, and certainly they should be encouraged to do that, but they're not coming to you with a particularly philanthropic proposal. And I think that it's important that all of us in the public understand that. They're saying, well, we need to get 50% of this input from VCBB funds to make this go. We've got all this capital, but we're not willing to use all of this capital unless it's matched by input from an equal amount of capital from VCBB. That's well, maybe cherry picking is the wrong term. Maybe it's more like a holdup.
That's great.
Sorry.
Nope, understood. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate you expanding on that.
Thank you.
Anybody?
Thank you, Irv.
Is there anybody else for?
No.
Christine, is there anybody else for public comment?
Oh, I don't see anybody. I think we can move on.
Yeah, I just want to, this is for the board's consideration and staff's consideration. One of the things that I'll be looking for Maple the Maple CUD proposal is to explain how they're, in the event they can't reach agreement with Otelco, how are they going to deal with a competitive group within their service territory? That needs to be addressed in their grant application. So it's not a slam dunk for them either. I think both entities have some skin in the game that it would be in their best interest to reach some sort of agreement.
I agree with you, Patty.
Thanks,
I
Brian.
agree.
Thanks, Dan.
Can I ask a quick question process-wise related to that? Since we already have the Maples proposal in, should we do a round of gather questions from the board outside of the meeting to send to them to respond back to?
I
Well,
would
that's
suggest
a really,
waiting.
go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, I would suggest waiting until we had some outcome of the meeting that the two
Yeah.
are going to have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that really given Otelco, given that they need to have that discussion first, I don't think it's a little premature, in my opinion, as well as Dan's, to address the Maple presentation, their proposal, their grant application.
Yeah, and I think Laura and Holly should be there if we're going to do it anyway, if they can, you know. They'll have
Agreed.
good input.
Okay, one question that I want to bring up that's related to this, Dan, you had volunteered your services to sit in on the negotiation.
Yes,
Um,
Thursday.
Just, is there an update on that?
Yeah, we've scheduled it for Thursday. Let me see this exact time.
Okay, the only question I want to pose is board members sitting in on a staff role, because I see this as a staff role. Does this, Dan, you would have to step aside on any vote with this if you're a part of the negotiation?
That's fine.
Why?
He's kind of in the middle of it.
I don't view him as putting a thumb on either side of the scale. I view Dan as being there to be provocative and challenging, to try to expand thinking about what's possible based on his technical background, what he's seen in other models, you know, just his expertise. I don't really see Dan as putting his thumb on either side of the scale.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not stepping into some mud here. And Stan or Christine, if you think this sours Dan's, Dan as a board member, if he's part of negotiation, just think about that. I'm not answering, I don't expect an answer right now, but I'm just, sometimes when you have board members part of a negotiation, it may sour their ability to vote on it at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, and I understand it. I will tell you that, by definition, this has now become the board process because they're following the appeal. So that may be a little different than standard stuff, but I appreciate it and we'll think about it. I see Ann Manwaring has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just want to point out something that to do with the competitive landscape, which is come directly to the board because Otelco, as a competitor to a CUD, has actually asked for money from you, which is giving you a direct ability to have a say in what happens with that competitive network. What I would like you, though, to understand is that all of us, and particularly in our CUD, DV Fiber, CCI is a direct competitor and has the same effect on our potential work going forward as Otelco does on Maple, except they've never asked you for money, so there isn't any way for you to take an action on that competitive nature. It's just who the CUDs are trying to implement our Act 71 and prior acts obligations going forward, is that we're rolling this out into a much more competitive arena than EC Fiber ever did going forward. It's a different world out there. So I hope that the extent to which you feel Maple needs to understand their competitive nature, that isn't any more true of them with their inherent competitor than it is for any of the rest of the CUDs. Thank you.
Okay, Christine, public comment, we're gonna I think the public comment item on the agenda is closed, so let's not take any more public comment.
Okay, no
We can
problem.
have board discussion among board members, but I just don't want to open this up into a field day of comment.
All right. Got it.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on Maple and Otelco before we move on to the parking lot?
So did we get, you asked a good question, Patty. Is Dan going to be part of that discussion? And we don't
Yeah,
have an answer.
I'm fine letting it move forward, but I do want to have Christine and Stan think about
Yeah.
I want to know that thought process. And if you guys see any harm, let us know. But until you opine on that, we're business as usual, and Dan plan to go ahead and sit in.
Yeah, we'll discuss this at our daily huddle at tomorrow morning at the staff, and then I'll follow. I'll follow up with Dan. I already texted Dan to say I'll follow up.
Okay, that's perfect.
Great.
Thank
Okay. On the park. So go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to suggest that it would be good to define where that could run afoul, and then that may be able to be compartmentalized.
Yeah,
but whatever the will is. That's the
waters, exactly. You can just navigate the waters with boundaries on them. Okay.
Okay. On the parking lot, there are two items which I can bring in next week, but it's one is the hiring of, I'm not even sure how relevant this is not anymore, which is the policy around hiring staff. Essentially, we don't hire staff till we have board approval. So maybe I just put that in a policy, right? Is that what you're looking for? But we would not hire somebody without board approval. And then the other one was the signature authority of the CEO or the executive director, which I'll come in with both of those next week for discussion.
Okay.
They're both low-hanging items, which are easy to do. So
our next meeting is next week, the 30th?
Yes.
Okay. Can everybody attend? Everybody being Brian and Dan?
Oh, isn't that Memorial Day?
Wait,
Hey, this
no,
is Rob. This
it
isn't
would
the
be the
next meeting.
6th.
No, it's next
Yeah.
the 6th. I'm sorry. I
Okay,
made a mistake before with staff. Sorry, Rob. Glad you were there. No, I was worried about the same thing Memorial Day, but we're not meeting till the 6th.
Okay, just wanted to check that and make sure.
Yep.
I can make the next.
And Christine, I'm going to send you a schedule. I've got some time that I'm going to be away, and I'll send that schedule to you and the other board members so you're aware.
Okay.
Is there anything
I'll
else?
have to do the same. Patty, maybe we should touch base. I'm going to be away end of June and beginning of July. So.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah,
okay,
and our
well,
our staff has taken the first week of July off, so I think we may all be on the same schedule. So it might be
Okay.
Yep.
I am totally unavailable the 21st through. Calendar's just seizing up. 21st turn until the 1st of July.
Okay, I'm the 20th to the 11th or 10th.
Okay.
okay. Got it. Great.
Okay, with that, I think we are ready. I move that we adjourn. A second.
Second.
All right, any discussion, any further items?
Nothing.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned and we will see you all on the 6th of June.
So, 6th of June. Yep, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Bye.